Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. How you doing? You all right? Yeah. Feels like music in here, doesn't it, you know? Feels like art is in here. It's good. There you go. So that's me. I'm Zane Lowe. I feel like a teacher already. The good news is I'm not going to be doing the teaching. I'm just here to facilitate some information for you guys with some fantastic people that we've got lined up over the course of the next 60 minutes. I'll get to that in a second. But first, you know, I hope you've kind of smelt this place and soaked it up. How many people have actually been to Abbey Road before? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, okay, cool. So the rest of you are having a really incredible experience already. We all know this is Studio One. This is where some of the most iconic and amazing songs ever written were probably written, embellished, and recorded in this room. And I'm a big believer that studios really embrace music and enhance it, the right ones anyway. And when the musicians leave the room, that music stays. So if you can imagine that, while today is going on, apart from listening, you know, just try and soak up the energy of Abbey Road because it's full of it. It's full of music. It's full of good stuff. So what's going to happen over the course of the next 60 minutes is the second part, it's going to be a two-part thing. You probably know this already, but I'm going to be talking to a multi-Grammy and Brit Award-winning producer, songwriter, and a man, most importantly, who collaborates. And that's kind of why we chose him to come and join us, because he hasn't just written his own music and been involved in producing his own records, but he's made a name for himself writing with some of the greatest songwriters around at the minute, you know, and he can give us some really good insight into what that's like and what he's learned as well. So his name is Ronson. He's going to come up here. We're going to talk to him, and we're going to give you a chance to ask questions. But first and foremost, right now, what we're going to do is we're going to play an interview that we did with a guy that's widely considered to be British modern music's greatest songwriter. And it's interesting for me to meet him because I have a huge respect for him as a craftsman, but our paths would never cross because I deal with other kinds of music, different forms, and he doesn't need me because he doesn't take that and he goes straight somewhere else to a bigger audience and bigger crowds. So it was really nice to meet him, good to sit down with him. He invited us into the Take That studio and we talked about songwriting from his point of view, and I hope you really enjoy this. And he's sorry he couldn't be here, but I think we all feel pretty privileged to watch this. This is 18 Minutes with Gary Barlow. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. So, you know, for the people here, you know, at the BBC Introducing Musicians Masterclass, I think you all know who Gary is, and maybe you could say a quick hello to them.
Hello, everybody. Abbey Road, my favourite place. Love recording there.
Clearly, as he made the effort to be there today.
Thanks for that.
I think we all know who our guest is today, but for just in case, you've got to play the just in case rule. And it gives me a chance to rattle off some stats too, just to humble you right at the start.
Music?
We did some clown-style music while this is going. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has won 5 Ivor Novello Awards, is that right? 5?
Is it 5?
5, 6 #1 albums, countless #1 singles, a huge amount of prestigious awards, most of which are smash hits and upstairs.
Yeah. They're the most important ones.
I love it. I walked upstairs to Gary's private area and I'm expecting to see Brett 12 smash hits awards laid right out there.
Beautiful.
You got to remember the people that supported you all the way through.
Best haircut.
Was it?
Yeah, best haircut we won.
I bet it wasn't as good as the one you got right now. I bet, in fact, that haircut has dated dramatically.
I'd win it again now.
You win it definitely now.
Yeah.
It's a strong look.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And I suppose you should say hello to everybody watching this right now as well, all the musicians who are gathered around watching this on tape. Mm-hmm. We're going to do our best to try and find out what songwriting means to you and tell a story through, you know, your experience as an incredible songwriter. Many consider you to be Britain's greatest songwriter. And
That was me that started that rumour.
That's a good one to start. Yeah. I suppose the obvious place to begin, Gary, is your first memory of music when it really hit, not just as a baby, or maybe it was as a baby, but when you realised that it was something that went deeper than just listening to it.
Yeah, I think the realisation moment of there was something amazing happening around my ears, that was listening to the radio and hearing Soft Cell, Tainted Love. It was one of those tracks where you couldn't distinguish what was going on, but it just sounded like euphoria. That's what it sounded like to me. I absolutely just loved all the elements, the voice, the synths. It was the chorus, the chimes, the bells. I just loved it. And from then progressed to Depeche Mode and Just Can't Get Enough. It was always pop music that got me excited. It was those sounds and it was those big hooks.
Do you remember what your first song was that you wrote as a young person?
I don't remember the very individual composition, but I used to write in batches. Batch 1, I'd have 8 songs. Batch 2,
So
batch
crazy.
3.
I used to do the same thing with rhymes. I used to write albums, fully conceived albums of 10. People don't want to hear this, actually. Sorry, as you were.
Yeah, no, that's how I used to write. And because I used to put everything to tape live, I used to play it as I was singing it. You were 3 minutes in and that one's done, right? Next one, play and press pause.
Yeah.
Undo the pause, ready for another song. So it happened in big clumps of music rather than just one here, one there.
It shows a huge level of ambition even early on, that you were looking at music. You were trying to find your craft, really work on your craft. It wasn't just like, I've written a song that I'm feeling right now. It's like, here's another one, here's another one, here's a workman's ethic. What was the turning point for you, and when did you really feel comfortable that you were a writer that was expressing yourself and your own views and not necessarily those of the writers that had gone before?
I could say throughout the 90s, I didn't have any views, really. I always felt that lyrics were a weak point for me, and I was often a copier of lyrics. I would use other people's emotions. I'd listen to conversations and talk to friends, and I always stole my lyrics from people around me and very seldom ever looked inside myself to write lyrics. That's something I actually have acquired and added to my skill this time round.
You have the experience now to draw upon those things, don't you?
I had the experience, but as a teenager, I spent so much time involved in music. I got to sort of 19, I didn't really have any opinions. I'd just done music for so long that it... And then, of course, you know, you join the band, and what happens is even though I was in the band for 5 years, your life goes on hold a little bit. You stop growing, really. You're just learning about what you're doing. Your life's been turned upside down. You're concentrating on other things, being a celebrity, being famous, dealing with that. The music goes further and further down the list. I remember being asked, you know, we need a first single for this new album, you know, have a think. And then at 6 o'clock that evening, you deliver Pray. And they all go, this is amazing. And
how did that start? How did Pray start? You've got a keyboard in front of you. We should make the most of it. I mean, what was the first chord and how did that, do you remember?
Pray was, well, in those days, I actually sang a full tone above where I sing now.
Right,
so
right,
if you come to any of our concerts now and listen closely, everything's now a tone below where
God bless
it was.
age.
But this started, if I played you the demo of this, which of course I haven't got, it was almost like a Simple Minds track, this was, when it started. And
Little muted guitar, yeah.
And then I added the hook. All I do each night is pray.
And do the words come at the same
how high
time?
it is. Hoping that I'll be above you again someday.
Do the words come that easily to you when you're writing the song, or do you get the melody first in that situation and sort of go da 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 da, and then kind of work it out?
Music's first for me every time. Still is.
And what words are going to fit into the melody? How's it going to flow? What's the best?
Yeah, I often start with a lyric, actually. I often start with a concept, an idea.
So when you sit down at the keyboard or at the piano, your hands will follow this as opposed to this.
Yeah, I think so. In the 90s, it felt so preset and programmed what I was doing because it had to be done fast. And remember that, you know, we were a boy band, so the area you're writing in is about this big, you know.
Explain that, because people will be sitting here watching this now going, okay, what do you mean by you're confined on the keyboard by this amount of keys or notes in order to reach a broader selection of people?
Well, if you think about the pop music that was around in the 90s, it's very simple, very few chords.
There's all this, wasn't it?
There's a lot of that. Yeah, I was constantly trying to break out of that, but I was, you know, you've got to remember then that I was like 21, 22, and I was answerable to people as well. You know, I had a label who wanted a certain thing, and they'd say, try one of these now. And so I was working for people. I don't anymore. I don't. When I say something's good now, or when our band says something's good, it's good.
So how do you make a keyboard work in that parameter? How would you, I mean, when you're writing songs in this kind of specific area and avoiding the high notes and the low notes?
It's more when I describe this, I'm meaning more as a, you know, oh, you can't go not too many minor chords. You know, it's those sort of confinements which I don't have anymore. I've got a full length keyboard these days. As then I was working to guidelines, and we were working to accompany our image, and it was more of a package then.
Yeah.
A package that was being sold.
Yeah.
As you know, as this time round, I don't know. It just feels a little bit more bespoke.
Definitely. Arguably, the biggest hit that you had throughout the first stage of your career in Take That, before your solo career, was Back for Good. And as a piece of music that has, I mean, that's travelled through people's lives and continues to. People watching this will want to know sort of the origins of that, how that began, what the original feel for that was when you wrote that song.
I actually, the chords started from, what's that Commodore song?
Easy?
'Cause I'm easy, oh. Actually, that's a different, oh. It's slightly different, but it's basically just that, Back for Good is. It's 4 chords. And it was that period where I was starting to explore with my voice a little bit more, and I was starting to sing a lot more falsetto than I'd ever sang before. And I wanted to get a song in that the chorus didn't go, yeah, yeah, you know, that big note. I thought, let's go into falsetto for the chorus, and that's when whatever I said went high at the beginning of the chorus line, and it really felt like the demo was so convincing. It was like the best demo I'd ever done, really. And it was so convincing that I just played it to everyone, and they were just like, wow, this is amazing. And it was our first single from a record, and it doesn't sound like a first single from a record.
Sounds like a third single.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that everyone was responding to it so well, it just felt like, well, this is a great area for us, because it's not boy band all of a sudden.
Exactly. It was a very kind of established, mature, classic pop song. It's the kind of thing that I'm sure Elton John would have been proud to write. And for the first time, it wasn't about the package, was it? It showed a depth to Take That. It showed, it showed a depth to your writing.
Yeah.
And the success came accordingly. All of a sudden, you were established as more than just the chief writer for a boy band, travelling the world, dancing on a stage. You were actually like, this guy's a contender. He's an Ivor Novello winner. That must have felt good.
It was nice.
What was great about the return of Take That as well was that Mark got a single away that was a big hit and a real fan favourite with Shine.
Well, when I came back to the band, very quickly, within a couple of sessions, I realised I had a partner in Mark. I had that link I didn't have the first time round. I thought, oh, this is great, this is, because his style's very different from mine. And so we were good partners for each other, and it made room for Howard and Jay to get involved as well then, because we'd be busy on our bit and they'd be tucking away at something else, and it felt like a band for the first time.
And you look like one too, and you still do, you know?
And so it was a big surprise, and for me it was good news that I had another writer, I had a partner in what I was doing. So from that, I then had the whole thing of Robbie coming back into the band, so I'm sat there thinking, okay.
He's a writer.
I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Mark's a writer.
Yeah.
Robbie's a writer. Now listen, on a 3-minute single, how much of each individual can you, I mean, how do you go down that way?
You sound like Radiohead.
So I had a plan straight away. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to become like one of these hip-hop producers. I'm going to make backing tracks. But not just, you know, a kick, snare, drum and a piano. I went to town on these backing tracks. I got drummers in, guitarists. So you press play and you go, this is a hit, what is it?
It's formed,
and it hasn't even got a melody or a lyric on it.
Wow.
So what I had was then, everyone would come in the studio, so I've got 4 guys sat there, I'd go play, and then we'd have 2 mics up, recording everything everyone sang, and everyone would be coming out with melodies, lyrics.
Love that.
So all of a sudden, you've got 16 bits of a song, and you go, right, well that bit's great, let's put that there, and it becomes like a puzzle then.
Talk us through the chord structure for The Flood and how that came about.
Flood's a really complicated record.
Just give us even one transition.
It's in a few different keys as well, and I've obviously got to remember what key we're in.
You do, you're on tour in a couple of months.
I don't even know it. We mapped the moon and the star, then you forgave them. we will meet you where the lights are. Yeah, it's a few different sections as well. It's a. I tell you what it was.
That doesn't stop. That's always moving.
I remember what it was now with this one. Is that what I did on some of the early backing tracks I made is I made too many sections because I thought if we just had a load of sections, then I can do them in any order
You'll
possible.
find a melody, move it around, yeah.
Because there's that whole bit where it goes, there's progress now.
Oh, what's that first one? Did you just play that before?
Yeah, it's a tricky...
That should not be in a pop song.
Yeah.
Wow, that shouldn't be in a pop song, should it?
That's Bohemian Rhapsody, a little bit of that. But don't tell anyone.
Okay. Let's talk about The Greatest Day before we move on real quick. Just talk me through that song and just play a little bit and talk, because I love that song.
There's the note there.
So it's just one of the most simple things you've done, isn't it?
Descending note.
That bass note.
Just love the descending notes. Have you noticed this hand's doing nothing different?
Yeah, but it's keeping it together. It's the glue.
It's keeping the tension there.
Yes.
That is. Keeps everyone...
And that's the emotion. That's the tension and that's the emotion.
Well, this is the drama down here. This is... I love that.
Yeah. I love that one because that's unexpected. Go back. People would expect you to go another note down.
Okay.
So dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But you went low and then back up, which almost is what, to me, emotionally as a listener, creates the euphoria of the song. Like, we're going to pick it back up. You know what I mean?
There's the release.
Yeah, it's setting it up for the big chorus. But then you got to go somewhere. There's a payoff coming, and you've got to find it.
Yeah.
And where's the chorus? Where is it?
Stay close to me. Hold on, stay close to me. Watch the world come alive tonight. I mean, they're just very simple chords. Short sections. That song was all about short sections.
Before we let you go, I want to go through, a few little tricks of the trade that you've learned. People will be watching this thinking, okay, some practical advice.
To me, the biggest sort of barrier, the biggest hurdle we've all got to get over as writers is keeping things fresh. And I always try and go into different keys.
That you haven't been in
get away from C, because we've all sort of started to learn what we do in C.
Yeah.
So stay away from that and just go, I don't know, A flat. All of a sudden we're in a different area now.
And you're lucky you have singers who can hit notes.
Yeah.
As well.
But even if that's not the key you end up in, write it in there, and it feels different. Your hands are now shaped different because you're up high on these black notes. So just keep it fresh. I mean, one of the great things I've always had is I've always had a really good mind for technology. I can work a sequencer. I can work a keyboard. I can keep my ears fresh with sounds, new palettes of backdrops. Instead of just sat here, this would do my head in. Every day sat in front of a piano, it would do my head in. I like good sounds. I like to write to something that sounds completely different than something I worked the day before. So keep it fresh. One of my best tricks is I go up and see my mum now and again for a few days. But I leave at my mum's house a MIDI keyboard and a set of Genelec speakers. And I arrive there and I set it up in front of the window, overlooking the fields, and I'm in a different situation with my gear.
That is you when you first start making music. That is when your parents buy you your first keyboard and you get some speakers and that's all you've got.
That's it.
It's ground zero, isn't it?
It is. But it's a new environment. Even though you're on the same gear, the same sequencer, you're in a new place. You're looking at something different. The inspiration's coming from somewhere else. The times I've been and checked in a hotel room in New York overlooking Central Park, Genelecs.
Boom.
I'm in a different place now. I'm in a different band. I'm in a different head. It changes things. And I really think doing that, go off, go on holiday to somewhere, but take your stuff with you and work. It's great.
What is it? Do you think that songwriting ultimately, at the end of the day, what is the ultimate achievement for any young songwriter watching this? What do you think is the ultimate goal in a broad spectrum?
The message, isn't it? I mean, the message is so, and the message, by that I don't mean it's got to be, you've not got to get people thinking out of the box too much. Just touch them, you know.
Make it direct.
Give them a message, no matter how complex it is or how simple it is. As long as you touch people with it, that's the job done right there. That is. There's nothing better. Those letters I get, where someone's at a big crossroads of their lives, and your songs made them turn right instead of left, and it's been good. That's beautiful, that is. That's changing the world right there. That's the power we've got. Work at it. Be serious about it. Put time in, because the more time, the more effort, the more of your heart and soul you get into there, the more chance you've got of touching people, I think. That's my opinion. That's the one I live by.
Gary, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant.
Thank you for talking us through so candidly.
Lovely to speak to you.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that. I can honestly say I really did. And there might be a few people that found out I was interviewing Gary Barlow who couldn't put the two things together, but that's also why we're here, is because I'm a big fan of songwriters. I'm a fan of songwriting. I know a lot of you here are writers and work on your own material. I think one of the sort of prevailing things I got from Gary before we spoke as well, because we were sort of talking to each other about what we were going to talk about and all that, and he's a really big believer in not forcing it, you don't have to wait for that divine inspiration. That happens where, your muse does the work for you and those words come out naturally and the chords just fit together, and those are the magic moments. You still have to work at it, but, walk away from it if it's not happening. Don't try and force a song out. Don't try and kind of dig deep to just try and find that thing. It will come eventually. You work on the structure, work on the things that make it what it is, and ultimately dress it up and present it to people. But that initial bit of inspiration, he's a big believer in not forcing that and kind of waiting for the words and waiting for that feeling to come to you, that indescribable thing. And I can identify with that, because I think that when we're looking for records to play on radio, it's really hard to break down a criteria. But one of the sort of kind of weird, ambiguous things that we are looking for is a sense of authenticity, a natural feeling to the song, that it feels like the artist in the song were meant to be. And that sounds really hippie-ish and corny and wishy-washy, but it does exist. And I think if you'll know when you've got the right piece of music, you'll feel it. Your skin will crawl in the best possible way, and you'll be like, this feels right, this feels like my voice, this feels like my beat, like what I want to say. And so that, I think, is really one of the ultimate goals that he strives for, and certainly what we look for in radio. I should point out as well that this is being streamed online, so for the people who couldn't be lucky enough to be here today in Abbey Road, many people all across the UK are watching this. And don't forget, bbc.co.uk/introducing is where everything introducing goes through. And I know all of you are very familiar with that, because that's why you're here. So let's get on with the next part of this. He's in the flesh, luckily, so we can applaud him properly. He's a man who has a huge respect for all kinds of music, and the first time I came across his music was when he made his debut album, Here Comes a Fuzz, as a rap producer, and I couldn't believe the length of the guest list and who he lined up for that record. I was like, everyone was on it. From Jack White to Rivers Cuomo to Ghostface Killer. It was an incredible lineup of artists and guests. And from there, of course, he's gone on to have huge acclaim and great success with his own records, doing versions, pretty much reinventing the concept of covering artists and turning it into his own kind of thing. And as a producer, he's worked with everyone from The Light to Kaiser Chiefs to Amy Winehouse, for which he won a bunch of Grammys. And most recently, he's also worked with people as diverse as Black Lips, Daniel Merriweather, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple. Without further ado, please put your hands together and welcome up here for the BBC Introducing Musicians Masterclass, Mark Ronson. Okay, so we have about 30 minutes with you, I think, and we want to take at least sort of 7 to 10 minutes worth of questions. So let's just get straight into it. We've got this laid out here. We're going to play some songs that mean something to you, so we can talk about the craft a bit.
Okay.
But I guess, like I did with Gary, the obvious place to start is when did you first realize that songs and music meant more to you than just something that was being played in the car on the way to school?
I think I was always pretty obsessive about music, because the first thing I'd first kind of clear memory I have is of waking up in my parents' house when they'd play music really loud, and they'd be having these like wild things at 3 in the morning, and I'd come down and sit in front of the drums and play air drums. I would always pretend that I was playing drums in the song. And I started playing drums, and I remember like my first record player, like the Sony one that was my first Sony. People are like, what's a record player? It's like this thing, and you put the needle on it. And I remember like I would just sit there transfixed, like just keep going like that, because I loved like the sound it made when it, you know, touched the thing. So I don't know, everything about my life I remember in terms of music and songs.
When did you get your first break as a writer? And not necessarily in terms of releasing songs or signing a record deal, but when was the first time that somebody actually showed you some kind of encouragement?
I think the first thing I did was this album for this singer named Nika Costa, and it was came out about 10 years ago, and I did this beat, and I remember DJing in a club, and I played the beat, and Jay-Z came up to me, and he was like, what is that?
Hang on, wait. This is the first time you ever got any encouragement? It was by Jay-Z?
No, I got some from my
Get
mom.
out.
The first time like from one of my peers. Yeah. And I played that track, and I DJ'd in New York in a lot of hip-hop clubs, so although it sounds ridiculous to say it, you did occasionally see a Jay-Z or a Big Pun or something like that. Yeah. It wasn't the norm, but so he came up and he was like, what's that beat? And I was like, well, I made it. And it kind of, I don't know if I remember, it was like the don't, whatever. And he said, I want to rhyme over when you make a remix of that, I love that beat, I want to rap over it. And I called him a lot. He never called back.
So he never dropped bars over it?
No, but it was like, you know, I was around as a DJ, and I saw a lot of people come up, like the Neptunes and Kanye, and blow up, and I thought maybe I'm just not that good at this, because I'm still DJing these clubs and they're having this huge success. And then it wasn't until I met Amy, I think, and Lily Allen that I really had the like breakthrough records.
How important is confidence, you know, in that department? Because you said that maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'm not doing this right, this isn't for me. You know, did you notice that your songwriting had changed once you started to get a little airplay and people started to take some notice?
I think it's good to have confidence with what you're doing, because you start to realize, like, okay, someone will like this if I keep making it. Especially if you've been doing it for a long time, like hitting a brick wall, and you just need someone to say, like, no, like what you're doing is worthwhile. And I think that's why it's so good to, no matter what, just always keep creating, because the more stuff you do, eventually you'll find your voice. Like when I was producing and making songs when I was DJing 5 nights a week, probably 30% of my stuff sounded like a Pharrell beat, because I was so influenced by that, and I thought like that's what I had to do to get on. And it wasn't until I found my own sound a bit, maybe mixing elements of things that I was inspired by, and like DJ Premier style of drums, but with horns, live horns from the Dap Kings.
So creating your own sound.
And creating your own sound, and then yeah, I think you see people like Prince say, like, I never listen to anybody's music other than my own, and they maybe know they're a genius. But me, I need a little bit, every now and then, some encouragement, as I think we all do, to know that we're on the right track.
How much do you, even subconsciously or just instinctively, stick to the classic pop song structure? If you're working with somebody or working on your own thing, you've got, you know, the initial idea, the spark of a great idea. Do you find more often than not that you end up falling into what many people consider to be a classics of 3 to 4 minute pop song structure, which I think is kind of regarded as intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, verse, chorus, and out?
I wish I was better at that. I mean, put it this way, I'm not like Animal Collective and like Radiohead, like really doing, you know, 6 minute sort of abstract compositions, but a song like Bang Bang Bang, for example, is quite unconventional, and it's like...
It's almost like in reverse, isn't it? The chorus almost comes in...
I don't get it, why she's singing, then there's a rap, and then it's going to the chorus, but then she's going to come and singing again. I just sort of go with what feels right, and I think that's good to do, as opposed to sometimes what's conventional, you know? Like in the middle of Back to Black, the middle eight part, like it completely slows down and goes from sort of major to minor. And
so what got you there? Was it just a sense when you were listening to the initial tracking or listening to the initial demo, like this could be a cool idea, or did it feel more natural than that?
I think because the music that I listen to and am heavily influenced by is a lot of, you know, late 60s, early 70s stuff where there weren't so many rules and people were making up the rules. Bands like, whether it's the Beatles or Motown, were making up the rules as they went along because they could, and it wasn't so much like we have to conform and do this. So there's never been anything in my head that said, like, you can't do this, because if it's good and it feels right, I think that you should always feel free to exercise that creative option. And obviously, bearing in mind there's no point in making like a 9-minute polka if you want to have like a career in music and a song on the radio, but I think you can still retain some sort of like uniqueness.
Ideas and innovation. You are a collaborator, and that's one of the reasons we got you up here, is that it's not just about your songs and one view of how you write, like with Gary. He's written for other people, but primarily he was talking from a take that perspective.
Yeah.
You know, you've made had huge success collaborating with other people.
Right.
That's a difficult thing to do. Not everyone can do that.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I've always really enjoyed and fed off the creative energy of other people. And, you know, alone, all I really come up with is like the chords and the beats. I'm not a big lyric person, I'm not a big melody person, so I rely on like these brilliant people, whether it's, you know, Andrew Wyatt, who wrote Somebody to Love Me, who's in Mike Snow, and even wrote part of that Bruno Mars song, Grenade. Like, he's so versatile.
I didn't even
him.
realize that. Did anyone else? I mean, how many people know who Andrew White is? Just out of interest as songwriters from Mike Snow. There's a few over there. That's a really interesting point, because some of the great songwriters who are out there making all the bucks, we don't even, you know, most people don't even know who they are, because they're the ones that are contributing ideas and phrasings and choruses. And Andrew's making a name for himself in that, isn't he?
Yeah, and really versatile. If you think that he wrote Change from Daniel Merriweather, you know, his first single, and then wrote the brilliant Mike Snow stuff, and even has, you know, co-wrote the Bruno Mars thing. And I like what he does because he comes from a very pure place. I think.
Which is what?
He's not ever writing to sort of like, we're gonna write a hit. You know, you can hear the songs on the radio and it sounds like 4 people sat in a room like, we're gonna make a hit, and it's gonna have this gimmicky sort of like, don't you touch my, ooh, and don't you touch my, and it's like, you know, okay, I know what happened. They were high-fiving, like, oh, this is going to be the thing, like. But you know, like, Tom York and Johnny Greenwood didn't, like, walk out high-fiving each other after they wrote Creep. Like, you can tell the things. We're not stupid. We know what came from a genuine place. So I like the fact that Andrew can write stuff that's really good and connects with people, but it's never contrived. And then, no, go ahead.
Let's talk about Amy.
Amy.
I've queued it up. I want to talk about your work with Amy. There's a famous story about Rehab, the title track, which was the launch pad of the success for that record. It was the starting point. And I think it's a really cool story for you to share with everybody here, because it gives an insight into where these little bits of inspiration come from for songs. It doesn't have to be you and a guitar in a forced environment, like I was saying, where we've got an hour, let's write a song. It could be from a phrase that someone says on the street, right?
Yeah, that happens a lot. In this particular case, I was walking down the street with Amy. We were in New York, and we had been working together for about a week. And we were walking to some store. She wanted to buy a present for a boyfriend, and she was telling me about a specific time in her life that was, I feel bad like talking about a friend like this, but I think I've told this story enough times, but she hit like a certain low, and her dad came over to try and talk some sense to her, and she was like, he tried to make me go to rehab, and I was like, no, no, no. And the first thing I was like, ding, 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 like I'm supposed
Really?
to...
It was that instant?
Yeah, I mean, I'm supposed to be like, how was that for you, you know? And all I'm like is, we got to go back to the studio. And that never really happens to me. I think sometimes it's like, it almost, my instinct was to be like, that's kind of goofy to write a song out of something so conversational and like that. But I was just like, I know this is goofy, but let's go back and see if you can write something that feels good, that comes out of that. And she wrote that song in about 45 minutes, I think. And she wrote a lot of the stuff. She's one of the most prolific, talented people, I mean, let alone that I've been around, that I think that we have. And being around her and watching her process taught me so much.
The track we have queued up here is Back to Black, which is the title track, which just shows another one of the many sides of that record. I think a lot of people kind of pigeonholed it as being this retro-sounding album, but if you actually think about it structurally, tempo-wise, BPM, rhythmically, subject matter, it's a really diverse collection of songs. It's just the sound that you gave it was an overall feel.
Right.
What about this one in particular? Because this is one of the more sort of faithful, historically faithful pieces of music.
Yeah, this is the first thing, I guess, that this is the only one we wrote together, and she had come to the studio. And sometimes when you meet a singer for the first time, you play some tracks and you say, do you like this one? And sometimes you just sit and go, what kind of record do you want to make? And she told me about all this 60s music she loves. So she left that day, and I was like, I need to come up with something really great. If she's going to come back tomorrow, I have one shot to impress her with something that's going to make her want to stay and work on this record. So I came up with the piano chords, and she came back the next day and she dug it, which was lucky. And then same thing though. She wrote all the lyrics and melody. I think when she gets inspired, I think it just comes in like bursts. So she wrote this in about an hour, and I still have the little scrap paper that she wrote all these lyrics on. That I'm glad I kept at the time. So I was like, oh, I throw this out, whatever. And now
Ka-ching!
it's like, yeah.
Some really interesting chord structures in this as well, which is, I know that you wrote the music for this song and you arranged it and put everything behind it. It's a lush arrangement, full of strings, full of layers, really wonderfully put together, but not your conventional pop song. It feels quite minor, it feels quite melancholy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. I don't know, I just think that, to be honest, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, I just wanted something a bit dramatic, and she had been talking to me a lot about, she liked the Shangri-Las, like, who always had these like breakdowns that were really dramatic in the thing. It was like, I'm gonna throw myself off this pier if Johnny doesn't come back to me. And I was like, I gotta give something that like hits her like that. And then the clanging chimes of doom.
What do they like to record?
Very quick. Just one hit's all you need.
And working with the string section as well, this early on in your career, to have embraced a string section on this level and brought them into a room and to create a soundscape this ambitious early on, you must have been learning on the spot.
Absolutely. Chris Elliott, who did the arrangements, was really great, and he sat, and I had references. I think a lot of good producers I know are like real music nerds, and we all know our errors and what you kind of want to put across, and I sat with him, and yeah, of course, when you're in that room with the orchestra, like, they don't have any time if you don't speak the language to be like, oh, I think, could you make it a little bit more like
green?
I'm thinking yellow. And they're just like, someone get this kid out the room. I don't know. It all happened pretty fast with this record, so.
But it's, I guess, something to take from this part of the conversation is the whole concept of stretching yourself.
Yeah.
And Gary Barlow talked about that at the end, didn't he, when he talked about the chord structures and, okay, you know how to play these songs, you could do it this way, try doing it in a different key or try a different chord and see what it does to it. And I think that's where the really great music comes from, is musicians who stretch themselves. And you've thrown yourself in the deep end more than once. I mean, you seem to, I've spoken to you around the time you've done projects or you're about to do projects, you sort of agree to do them and then you worry about it later.
Yeah. And then you have like the
Panic attacks.
fear times a million that night before you're about to start. Like, what am I doing? This is going to be the one everyone figures out that I'm a complete fraud and it's rubbish. And then you get through it. I think that, but I enjoy that challenge. You know, the Kaiser Chiefs that were speaking here earlier, I remember the night before I went in with them, I was like, this is a band I love. Like, what am I going to do? They're going to, you know, be something new that's not going to ruin what I like about them. Same with the Black Lips. And I don't know, that, you know, even making Record Collection, my last record, I knew that I needed to do something challenging, change up the palette and the sounds, and obviously going from a covers album to an album of
So the moral is,
material.
no one's going to die if you do something different in the creative environment. It's not that dramatic, just try it and see where it goes. You know, take a risk musically, don't play it safe necessarily all the time. Working with bands, how many people in this room are actually in bands, aren't solo artists or beat makers or producers? Okay, so it's about 50, maybe 40% of you. So working with bands, the dynamic of bands, I'm sure everyone in this room knows that it can get tricky and difficult trying to get that many ideas across from that many points of view. Your job as a producer and at times a co-writer is to facilitate some kind of calm in that environment. Is that hard?
I think it's definitely one of the tools of the trade that helps. I mean, I grew up in a family with 9 brothers and sisters, so I'm sure that gave me a good amount of, like, kind of diplomacy, which I think is good. Like, and I think that you have to be able to. I mean, you hear stories about like metal producers like Ross Robinson that go in and are like, tomorrow you're gonna die if you don't play this amazing drum take, and like throwing chairs across the room. And he makes great records, so the proof is in the pudding. Me, no one would believe that. It'd be like, you're not really gonna throw that chair, or you are.
You're gonna die if you don't make this amazing record.
I'm just gonna go pick up that chair I just threw.
I'm gonna move this chair 1 meter to the left until you get it right.
No, it's cool. I mean, you know, working with. I just did a new album for Duran Duran, and they're really a democracy as a band. And you know, you learn about people's different idiosyncrasies and how to juggle it, and who's real talent is lyrics and who's his melody and where to come in. And,
well, let's talk about that. You know, we'll play a Duran classic, and I can say classic because I loved this record when it came out when I was a kid. What's not to get, man? Listen to the sound of that record. Amazing. What was it like sort of going into the studio with your heroes and working with them and as writers? What did you learn from Duran? Because I know you learn from working with people. You always say that to me. I've learned a lot from working with Duran or Amy. What did you learn from working with these guys? They've been doing it a long time.
Well, the first thing I can really think of is that I learned so much about synthesizers and how to really construct like that brilliant old school analog sequencing and sounds, which Nick Rhodes is basically a master of. And he will tell you that, the first to tell you he's not the greatest musician technically, but he can build, I mean, you listen to the sounds in there and stuff, it's amazing. So for Record Collection, where I went a little bit synth, like nutty, that he definitely, I was using the lessons that he kind of gave me, you know? And then I just learned kind of, each project you just learn something, you just amass hopefully this little encyclopedia of like what works and what doesn't. How do they approach songwriting as a band? I mean, do they have to work at it? Is it something that they let just happen naturally? I mean, what's their approach towards, because this is also for songwriters, so. That was a really different process I hadn't really been in before. I got to the studio the first day and they had like 15 demos ready. And to be honest, it was really awkward because I didn't really love any of them. And here I am with my childhood heroes and they're like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I like the bridge in track 4, you know? And it's like, and then instead of like dwelling on that, I was like, let's just get in and let's just start something fresh right now.
Did they know that you weren't into the demos? Did they think
I kind of told them and I was like, it could be so great. And I think people love you and I think you could make a brilliant record. And so a lot of those sessions would start, I would program a drum beat on my MPC and then they would all go in on their instruments and they have this little writing room and just start playing. And they would, you know, jam, improvise for 2-3 hours until there was a great verse section and their build. And then Simon, the singer, would sit there the whole time and he'd just sing melodies over and over again. And then at the end of the session, they would go home and I'd go through the Pro Tools for the whole day, like 3 hours, and just like fine-tooth comb for the best melodies and assemble, I guess, something. And Simon would hit the next day and I'd be like, this is what you sung and I think this is a good arrangement, what do you think? I'm not saying that happened all the time. Sometimes he came in with a clear melody of what he knew the verse and chorus was, but I mean, I get some kind of weird sick joy out of like sitting in front of a Pro Tools screen for 5 hours and looking for those things because it's great. And you know, if you're a little bit lazy, you're like on your Twitter for a second, you could miss that one great melody that go by that never happened. So I think it's good.
Well, that Rehab
to
story
care.
proved that, isn't it? You know, you have to grab that inspiration when it presents itself and make the most of it. How many people, just as a little sort of poll, how many people would say that they write songs in a similar way, that they prefer to kind of jam it out and find the inspiration from jams and doing it that way, rather than sitting down and composing a song? Yeah, cool, okay. And how many people really like the craft of sitting down with a piano or an acoustic guitar and working on a song? Interesting, isn't it? The numbers would have been so much greater.
And now you will fight.
Yeah. Okay, Pro Tools over this side and conventional. 10 years ago, the numbers would have been far more to the latter, wouldn't they? Or maybe 20 years ago, you know, before computers. How many people have an inherent distrust of Pro Tools, Logic Audio, and computers in the overall feel of music? How many people don't embrace it? All right, that's okay, that's fine, it's okay, it's each to their own. It's amazing how much that has taken hold, isn't it? And in a way, how it's freed up the songwriting process for a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
I think so. I mean, I was skeptical too, because I was all like, no, analog, bro. Like, and then I made my first record, and the other producer with me, it was the Nika Costa record, and he said, we're going to use a computer. I was like, no, computers are lame. And
but you'd made beats, you'd been a rap producer.
But I guess it was different to me, because that was quite tangible. I was punching pads, and then they were like, this computer, that is what they made OK Computer on. And I was like, well, that can't be bad. Like, I mean, honestly,
like it's Abbey Road. Like, this one console is the OK Computer console, right? The wiring in it soaked up all the inspiration.
Hey, man, it was the early 2000s. Computers were new. No, I don't know.
Let's talk about Record Collection, because that's your latest offering, and it's definitely your most diverse offering in terms of guests and co-writers, and yeah. I mean, that's why you brought the Business International into the fold, because I think you said to me you felt uncomfortable calling it a Mark Ronson record when it had been so collaborative.
it's a band, you know, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was pretty nervous coming off the back of Version, which was all covers, and I was like, are people really going to care about me writing songs? I just thought what I'll do is I'll go in the studio with 4 or 5 of my favorite musicians, and we'll just play and we'll write and improvise for a month, and then we'll see if there's anything good.
Did you have any idea of how you wanted the record to sound overall?
I just knew that I wanted it to sound nothing like Version or anything else I've been working on. And I think the synths and bringing in the analog synths and that kind of stuff was the first idea. But then there's a song like, I guess, There's Somebody to Love Me, which isn't as synth-driven, it's a bit more like Afrobeat. And it's just like, I'm so lucky to know these great musicians, the guys I work with in Brooklyn that are a mixture of the Dap Kings and Antibalas and different bands in there. And I play in there and there's just a joy. It's like, I love playing music with these people. And, you know, not all the songs can be all like happy, like we're having so much fun. And I think Andrew Wyatt, who wrote the lyrics and the melody for this one, brought like a kind of more of a melancholy, which is good to have too.
It's amazing that he penned such a poignant lyric for an artist who could sing it so honestly, because it really feels, if you listen to the song without knowing the backstory, you would assume that George Michael had some moment of clarity. Boy George, my bad. Boy George had written, had some moment of clarity and you know, actually written that song from his own point of view.
Yeah, we wrote this song, me, Andrew, and Alex Greenwell wrote the lyrics, and then like 2 days later, it kept bugging me. I don't know why. I just had like this idea. I was like, we have to get Boy George to sing on this song. And to be honest, it was completely harebrained because I hadn't heard Boy George sing a song since Crying Game, but it was just like this idea toying in the back of my head. So I'd interviewed him once for this magazine. I tracked him down, I played him the song, and he liked it. And he said it sounds like something I could have written. And I think that's why I just knew that he would dig it or sound appropriate singing it.
What are some of the sort of core things that having worked with many songwriters over the course of your career and having written some fantastic melodies yourself, what are some of the really important things that, you know, people here as writers, as creators and artists can take from your experience?
I think the most obvious basic one I would say is just to be prolific. Like the more stuff you make, you find your voice, you find it, and your voice is always going to evolve over time. But I think that just only by constantly creating, and that's my main one. And then I think just obviously originality. That's the best thing. I mean, you all look like quite an original crowd. I don't know. I don't want to. You'll probably know exactly what you're doing, but I think that the thing of chasing trends and doing something because it's on the radio is like, at best, you'll always be like the second person to do it. And I think it's so much more exciting to do something completely fresh and new and sell a fraction of what you would do if you just copied what the new trend is.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because I think, you know, anybody in here, well, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, let's be honest, a lot of you are here because you're looking for a way to learn something new about your craft or to simplify something. And ultimately, I think anybody writing songs wants those songs to be heard. And whether that translates into money or airplay or bigger stadium gigs or whatever those things that come with it, really it's about having your music heard and appreciated on its own merits. But you're right, again, you can't force that. You can't actually look for some equation to make that happen, unless, of course, you work for Zenomania?
Zenomania.
The people who literally have the factory line of writers who
Yeah.
go like, we need a middle eight by 6 p.m.
Look at the biggest success stories of last year. Like you look at Plan B and Tiny Temper and all these people that did stuff that put out bootleg records themselves, or Plan B who was committing what you could have called career suicide.
Oh, that's a great story,
like,
the Plan B story, because I remember I spoke to one of the guys from Chase and Status after a gig on a plane flying back, and I said, what's Ben doing? What's Plan B doing? Because they'd done the end credits record. He's like, well, it's pretty interesting. Ben is making a concept record about a defamed soul singer who gets wrongly put in prison, and it's a modern day soul record. And he's singing everything, and it's a concept album. And we just both were like, right, it's like that, really? How's that gonna sound? And now it's gone on to be the runaway success of, so yeah, I mean, once you find that voice, once you find what it is that you wanna say, if you say it with the right level of intensity and authenticity, it will find the audience, right? At the end of the day.
Word.
It's gone by really fast. I hope you guys got something out of that. I hope you enjoyed it. And now, if you didn't, this is your opportunity to make the most of it. So, who's got some questions for Mark Ronson? Yeah, right here. We're just going to wait. We've got people with mics, so once you put your hand up, just hold tight.
Having been in bands for quite a while, how do you go around about being a a songwriter and not a performer? You know, how do you get the people to write songs?
I think like people like Andrew, who we were talking about, who, you know, I think that it depends. I mean, if you want to write songs that necessarily like don't go with your band or stuff that you want to like, you have another side you want to exercise. But I think you send your songs to publishers, I think, or just record them and demos and stuff. And obviously, you know, when you have your MySpace and all this kind of stuff, that you can put your songs out there. But I think like I've got so many songs that we've recorded on like Daniel Merriweather's record or someone else because someone sent me a demo through a link on MySpace. So I think that it's just like you just record them and then get them out.
Yeah, the thing about publishing houses as well is that they are still a really powerful, important thing for songwriters. And there's this, I always grew up being around music thinking that there was this inherent suspicion about teaming up with publishers because you give all your songs away for huge percentages and very little money, la la la. But if you're an actual songwriter, that's obviously was complete young man's paranoia. But I think that if you are a songwriter, then rather than necessarily kind of try and get your demos into the hand of record labels over and over again, you could do worse than go directly to publishers with your songs, try and get 5 minutes and a coffee, get them to hear one song. They're really in tune and they know what they're looking for. And also they probably have a little more of a distance perspective where they're not looking for a radio hit necessarily. They're looking for the spark of something of a writer that could go on to write great things. And they're always looking for writers, always looking for inspiration for artists that don't necessarily turn their hand to it themselves. I've got a question here from Twitter. From Jay Roberts, because we're online. We're streaming right now as we speak. What's your favorite lyric of all time?
I don't have to sell my soul, he's already in me. I mean, it's not the kind of thing like I want to like have sung at my wedding, but it's the opening line of the Stone Roses, I want to be adored. And to open your first album at 19, all like the folly of youth and say something so brash, I don't have to sell my soul, he's already in me. It's like the most OG pimp thing ever.
You know what's super especially cool about that is that he hasn't. And it's one thing to say it right at the start, and many of our favorite bands and musicians have laid down the rules and bent them as they've gone on. And I, for one, am really soft on that because I want, you know, I think all musicians have a right to be happy, and if they have to change the rules to do that, then fine, because music is personal. But Ian Brown has stayed true to that all the way through, so fair play to him. Right, another question from the floor. Who'd like to ask Mark Ronson a question? Yep, okay. In the front here.
Like when you go and write a song, what do you like aim to do first? Like what's the 3 things you try and like mark in it to make it like more significant to yourself?
The song?
Yeah.
I probably am not the most amazing person ever to answer that question because I really write the chords, but I can say just from the people I've been around the experience, I think if you take someone like Amy Winehouse, I think the reason the songs resonate so much is because it's so personal. And I think it's great to just write sometimes songs that sound good in the club, and we all like songs like Michael Jackson, whatever, that you just put you in a good mood. But the really great classic songs of all time are the ones that just you've written from a personal place because people know that, you know.
What's the favorite song that you've ever been a part of the process?
Like not written, but just been a part of it.
Just been a part of it, yeah.
I don't know, like, it's hard to say because you get so burnt out on certain things, but I mean, I would say I'm very proud of, I had nothing to do with writing it, but Love is a Losing Game off Amy Winehouse's record, or Somebody to Love Me from this new album, or Bang 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 I like because, you know, it's just fun to play.
It's got swagger, yeah. Okay, there's a question over here from someone, I think in the black vest, is that right, over here? Yep, someone's going to bring a mic over. It's just right in the middle there. There he is with his arm raised up the back. Yep, there you go. Antonia, just quickly to save time, do you want to get that piece of paper I have to read at the end as well? Because I don't know where that's gone. Yeah.
In terms of like the flavour of radio, as in what's kind of been played currently on radio, would you ever change the instrumentation of your music to, not to obviously suit the radio, but do you ever kind of, when you're writing something new, obviously the Amy Winehouse stuff had lots of horns and lots of kind of 60s and that beats. Do you always try and think of something completely different to do in terms of?
I think so. I think it's good too because, you know, by the time your record comes out, if you're trying to sort of chase the sound of radio and what's going on, you're just going to be behind the curve. So I think it's, like I said, it's good to just do what you feel is kind of the right arrangement or the right instrumentation for that song, because that's going to feel real. Whenever I've tried, like in a moment of weakness, to copy something that I thought might be a hit or might sound like a hit, it's usually terrible. Like, you can hear it. As soon as you hear it, you go, that's not what that guy's supposed to be doing. And then you have people like Dr. Luke, who should be writing those Kesha, Katy Perry giant hits, because that's what they're great at, you know? So I think as long as you're writing what you know is like you can't swear on this, can you? It's so hard not to swear. What you know is your ish, you know? Yeah.
I think it's, you know, you talked about someone like Dr. Luke, and I'm prone to a bit of a whinge about kind of factory line pop music, like the next person, you know, I'll have a pint with a friend and be like, you know. But the great ones, the ones that are out there and are taking up a huge amount of airtime with these big, huge pop songs that get the most amount of airplay than anything else, that's a craft in itself. And a lot of the time you'll find that that's their sound. What you can hear is when someone's taking their sound,
sure,
and trying to apply that. I heard a song today that will remain nameless that was, I mean, I really wanted to reach out to a friend and say, I sincerely hope that X producer produced that record, because if they didn't, X producer should be furious.
Right.
Because it was just such a ridiculously obvious rip to me. I couldn't even get my head around it, you know? And that's the stuff that makes me mad. That's when I'm just like, oh, you know, I can't believe that someone's actually, that to me is making a mockery out of the art of songwriting, you know? But if pop music's what you do, and big pop structures and songs are what you do, there's nothing wrong with having it played a lot on radio, I don't think. I think it's a part of the process. Who's got another question? We've got a few more minutes left, so, yep, down the front in the red jacket. Yep. You're so close, mate, you could probably yell it, but you've got the mic coming down. So.
You keep on saying that don't force sort of writing songs. What about, how do you deal with sort of label pressures and how labels are basically telling you to try and get your hit songs and make sure
Later?
I think so. I mean, I think there was I had 3 years pretty much in between when Version and Record Collection came out, and the label kind of was like, hey, when are we going to get this record? And I was, just to be really honest, I was like, it can't come out till it comes out, because if I force it, it will be inauthentic or at worst rubbish. So I think that
Thanks.
I mean, I think you can definitely put in the hours. We did go to the studio some days every day for 14, 15 hours, and there are going to be 5 days where everything that comes out is not great, and you hit a bit of a block. That's just human, unless you're like, you know, Stevie Wonder or Prince, or maybe, I'm sure they all have bad days too, but I think you just have to, you work and you do what you do.
It's a great question, though. I mean, I was being facetious, because really, record labels are a reality, and they allow you to go and make music and give you a budget that you can't afford yourself to go and have a really serious go at it. It should be seen as an opportunity rather than the answer. Just from my experience, having been around the whole concept of record labels and artists and how they work together for a long time and watching it from a distance, if you trust them, if you trust their opinion, there's nothing wrong, whether they work for a record label or it's your mum. There's nothing wrong with taking the opinion of somebody on your art. And you'll know if you need it. You'll know if you're looking for that. But in terms of pressuring you, well, a bit of healthy pressure is good too. And a lot of, you know, great albums have been made under pressure. You need an end time, because otherwise, you know, it turns into Chinese democracy, and we all know what that sounded like. You know. Okay, next question. Yeah, down here.
Yeah, I just wanted to know your dream collaboration right now. Who would you personally right now, like any artist in the world right now?
I can answer that. Me and Marcus started working on a little something, little 9-minute polka vibe going on.
It's called The Odd Couple. It's kind of a lo-fi dubstep note. I think there's a lot of people I think are really exciting, and I always hesitate to say I want to work with them, because then you're sort of putting the pressure on. And in a way, I've been really lucky to meet some of the people I've worked with and made the best stuff with completely by accident. I mean, I did a track last night with Professor Green and Wretch 32, who are both like exciting young people that I like. And I don't know, I think like Plan B, who we talked about, the idea of maybe getting in a room with him is
But that's
exciting.
attainable, not disrespect to those artists, those people you can get on speed dial. Let's really push it out there. I mean, one person.
Biggie.
Yeah, Biggie. That's going to be hard.
I don't know. I hate to say it, because then they're just gonna
But
think
you
I'm
do
a
have
stalker.
someone in mind. You keep saying you hate to say it because you don't want to throw it out there.
No, I don't. I like the people that I think, like, of course, like Stevie Wonder or Steve Winwood or someone who's just like a legend in the game, I would love to, but I feel like putting that karma out there is just weird.
I reckon we got time for one more question, just to push it up for a few more seconds. So has anyone got a really burning... Yeah, first hand up, so we'll go to you up at the back there. Yep.
Do you think it's important for like a record to stay consistent, like from start to finish? Or like with my band, for instance, we're quite eclectic with every song, so every song's quite different.
Yeah.
Does that matter?
I think, no, I don't think so, because that's like that's a stylistic thing. I think there are songs that like have an arc, like the classic thing, verse is great, chorus blows open, big bridge, and then giant last chorus. But there's also really interesting bands, like think of a song like Paranoid Android by Radiohead, or like, I like that band Everything Everything, that's sort of like all over the place. And I think it's a good song doesn't really have rules. I think if you want to have a hit song, sometimes you have to like rein in the over creative like thing a bit, but no, I don't think there should be rules when you're creating. You should never feel constricted by that.
But then look at a band like Tool, man, who have never written a radio hit in their entire life and take everything over 10, 15 minutes, and they've sold consistently 3 million albums in America or pop. So if it's true to you, you know. It's been really fun, man. It's gone by really fast.
Yeah.
And good luck with The Odd Couple.
Thank
and
you
want.
Hope it does really well for us.
We're now going to, this is the BBC Introducing Musicians Masterclass, and we're going to break for lunch. We're back in 45 minutes. But if you wouldn't mind just putting your hands together and just saying thanks to Gary in spirit, and thanks to Mark Ronson.
Thank you.